see me?
I can see you. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So it's kind of like the festival time. I guess you're pretty busy right now.
It's pretty busy, yeah, but I'm happy we could have a moment.
Yeah, because I feel like it's not your first rodeo. I feel like you have a lot of background going to festival, right?
My graduation film went to some festivals, and that was a lot of fun, and it made me totally fall in love with, everything that you get to experience through that.
So where we stayed, it tells the story of longtime friends Danielle and Carrie, with one of them lying on the deathbed. So there's some buried feelings between the two characters. We learn more about the relationship as it goes along. I really liked it. It's intimate, it's poetic, very powerful. So how did the stars align for that project? Because I see that you also wrote the film. So why did you want to tell that story?
Yeah, so my graduation film actually won this prize in the Netherlands that basically it's called the Filmfund Wildcard.
Mhm.
And they give you this kind of free, pass to make whatever you want to make, which is really wonderful. And also that makes you really think like, well, then what is it that I really want to tell if I can do anything?
Mhm.
Um, and I actually, during Film Academy, my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer and passed away.
Oh.
So it was quite a short process. He had 5 months. So I saw someone that I loved very close by really, lose life and deteriorate, which is obviously a very gut wrenching, horrible experience. And at the same time, I noticed how much love it created, how much kind of our humanity was shown in those moments. We all think about the perfect goodbyes. We see a lot of films about that, or like the last things we want to say to each other. But I actually was very in love with the fact that we sometimes don't know what we say. We don't know what the right words are. We don't know what to do. Do we spend all the time together? Do we still have our own life? And so I think that we all deal with it in a different way. And I really wanted to make something about that and about, that bravery that we all show in our own ways, whether, clumsy or perfect, that's really where I wanted to create a film in that arena.
Oh, I mean, I'm so first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about your father passing away. I mean, it's always a big loss when you lose someone so close. But I guess
Yeah.
it kind of like it pushed you to think a little bit about what you want to do next. So I guess that kind of like it makes sense why you would want to make that project. And I would say also like confronting mortality is a main theme in your film. So why do you think that like kind of being on your deathbed can push someone to accept its own like reality and identity? Because it's also one of the theme in your film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. We're kind of put in this pressure cooker, right? And I think when we face our last moments, or when the person we love faces their last moments, all the layers and all the masks come off, and kind of all the nonsense that we maybe get lost in during day-to-day life
Mhm.
really falls away. And it really becomes about like, well, what is real and what really does matter? And
Mhm.
it is just about the connections we have, but also I think we're forced to face our fears in a way where,
Mhm.
sometimes maybe we try to be the big guy, in day-to-day life. But when we are faced with these moments, maybe other parts of ourselves that we have suppressed all this time do
Mhm.
come up. And I think instead of looking at that as something bad or painful, that is actually can be something very healing and
Mhm.
beautiful, that we're allowed to look at these things that normally maybe, we don't see.
I really like how you tackled all those themes, and there's something very intimate about the film. So, talking about the intimacy, was it important for you to shoot the film with kind of like a smaller crew to make everyone feel at ease because you're kind of dealing with those heavy themes? So, it feels like the right decision to do that, to have like that sense of proximity with the characters, but also like for the people on the set. So, was it like kind of like important for you to do that?
Yes, for sure. So the way that we went about this is also, in general, we had a very small crew. This was actually filmed in a really tiny little house. So that's one thing. But also for me and for my style of filming, I really like to have kind of this flexibility to do improvisations, to have the
Mhm.
characters. We'll have the scene, but I'll have them randomly restart it or randomly pick it up in a different part of the play. I wanted to or the film, I kind of wanted to create this fluid narrative because that kind of touches on the feelings when we get close to, our end. Time does become fluid in a way, and like moments can feel like, they're connected when they were actually a week apart. So for the shoot, that kind of aligned with how I like to film, which is have the actors, have the cameraman, have everyone kind of like get into this almost trance, and I'll give them like a direction and they'll go from it, they'll flow. Based on that, I'll pick something new up. Sometimes we did takes of an hour and a half. And so after shooting, the actors were even like, I don't remember what we shot, because I think that's where you get sometimes these moments in the film that they're being so authentic, because I think they lost themselves in it a little bit. And that's also a great value, as it says something about them, that they were able to be that vulnerable and be able to flow into it like that, so that was super important to me. And because of that way of shooting, we also had, everybody kind of be so part of the scene. I think we've had at some point the sound person crying on set during a take. We've had the cinematographer like trying to shoot but like couldn't see the screen because he was like crying, and not in a way where it's like, it's not so much about the crying, but it's about the involvement and the in the moment of all these crew members that, shows that it was this collaborative moment that everybody was in.
Well, I guess it's one of the most important thing on the set, like just having this vibe, kind of feel like you're working with a family, and it tightened your relationship. I'm sure like you're very, very close to those people that you worked on the film. But in the context of the film, it was also very crucial to have an on-screen chemistry between Carrie and Daniel. So how did the audition process go? Like, did you screen them together, or like how did you find both actors?
Yeah. Well, I wrote it and I already knew who Carrie was going to be. And then based on that, we did like 6 kind of, it wasn't even castings. It was almost like work sessions of like an hour and a half with different actors to see who had the best chemistry with Carrie. And kind of like I just said, the way that I shoot specifically, I knew it really depends on the actor if you want to do that and if you want to work that way, because it also is extremely vulnerable to just be like, we're just going to be constantly improvising, and that's not necessarily how everybody likes to work. And so I'm also very respectful of that and understand that that's something that they also in those work sessions had to experience to see if they feel comfortable with it, because that was really important to me, that both for me and whoever was coming into it knew what they're going into and if they feel comfortable with it, so that we could all go into the set and go full force, 100%.
So you did test them together and you realized like, okay, this is definitely working out. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Because I noticed you just mentioned, because I was asking you like, where was it shot? Because it takes mostly place in one location. So you said it was shot on a tiny house. Is that what you said?
Yeah. We were looking for a space that we could kind of turn into this, a little bit of a hospice setting, but at the same time, something that we could also make feel homey in a way, so that we can play around with coldness and warmth at the times that we needed. And we found this house that the production designers completely dressed and turned into this place.
Yeah, you kind of answered my next question, because I was going to say like an hospital room is very boring and depressing as a whole. So it's an interesting choice of color palette and lighting that you did. It kind of like this warmth that you just mentioned. So I was going to ask like, what was your thought process, like crafting the visual identity and working with your production designer? It's kind of like basically making it homey. I guess that was your main goal here.
Yes. Yeah. And I do think that warm colors in this case are important, because you can always also in collaboration with the DP and the gaffer, I wanted to use light in this to kind of, obviously we're kind of stuck in one place. So you do want to have, something that we go through, right, as we watch the film. So in order to still have some kind of variety, I wanted to work with colder lights and warmer lights, accentuating different elements in the production design as well, to kind of play with when is there more distance between them, and when are we allowed to kind of come close and get more intimate with them.
Yeah, and I also want to talk about the sound design because it
Yeah.
carries the film in a lot of moments. For example, it starts kind of like on this black screen with this dreary feeling of death and the breathing and the sound of the wind. So it kind of feels like death right from the moment the film begins. There's also some moment with the music. It can be like very discreet, but when it's there, it kind of like this ethereal feeling. So what was your approach with crafting the sound of where we stay? Yeah.
Yeah. The sound, for me, sound design is one of the most exciting parts of the film. I think I also write scripts kind of already thinking about sound a lot.
Mhm.
So I think in this case, I'm trying to think back because it all went so intuitive as we were creating it. Obviously, the breathing and the physicality was a really important like starting point. We got a lot of Foley done, which is really like wonderful and amazing, because it just brings you like into that space with them. The breath specifically was something that we recorded on set, but was really important to me because that is like that last breath is so much a part of someone's last moments and such a distinct sound. So if you've been close to it, you do recognize it. And there is like I don't know, there's something like very animalistic about it, right? Like if we're talking about the layers falling and like us being confronted with like what we really are, I think something about what we hear in that last breath says a lot, and really confronts us with that.
Mhm.
But then also, I'm just like, I love, we worked with the sounds of, the street outside and like cars passing by at certain moments where you want to maybe feel a little bass or a little oomph. And then the music actually was a really interesting process because the composer, Anna Lotte, she had started with just some random kind of improvisations. And I think, so this is a very technical thing that I don't know how to exactly explain, but basically she recorded something and she has some kind of like plug-in or whatever that she could run it through that extended it and like stretched it out and turned it into something.
Mm.
The thing with that is it is a process that you can't control, right? It comes out the way it comes out.
Mhm.
And she had sent a couple samples for us to kind of play around with as we were just looking at, spotting the material and like looking at everything. And I heard it and I was just like, this is it. Like, this is the sound of the film. And so we started adding more sounds like that to it. But it was really cool because it was similar to the way that I worked with the actors and everyone else. It was very intuitive and a lot of improvisation and allowing things to just flow as they were instead of being like, well, we need exactly a beat here, so craft that.
Yeah.
It was like, what is the music informing us and how can we like have everything flow together?
Because there's this I don't want to say a dream sequence, but there's those little moments where it kind of feels like surreal, and this is where the music goes in. And to me, I kind of see it like kind of like as a passage to heaven because the character is kind of like in a phase in his life. So I think you really chose the right moments to put the music, but also in crafting, like right from the moment I put my headphone on and I started the film, I was like, I felt that. So that you did a really great job with that, and I can understand you had some experience with that prior to making the film, so it kind of shows that you were able to craft it like very very well. So congratulations on that. I really like the sound design there. But there's also
by the way, the sound designer also is like very good at creating those tiny little nuanced sounds, which I think is like, that's such a skill to know how to just use something very small that still brings you in. Just wanted to give him his credits.
100%. What's his name?
Max van den Hoever.
Perfect. So, and also it's the silence that speaks volume and sometimes during the film. So you can tell it's a complicated relationship between the two characters. So it's important to have those silence without necessarily needing them to have exposition and tell everything that's going on. I feel like the image speaks for itself in your film.
Yeah.
So there's also something about cinema that requires you to feel things, some things that cannot transcend the screen, like the touch of a human hand, the perfume of a close one, the snow falling on the face. So how do you approach that? Because I feel like you have a very strong poetic cinematic language.
Thank you. It's something that I think comes kind of natural because they're all translations of, the feelings that you have, and I think the point you made before is there is so much about the silence and the actions, and I think that's always the big the beauty and the hard part of film is like, how are we translating something without explaining it? How are we seeing it? How are we visualizing it? And sometimes it is an action, and sometimes it is, instead of letting a character say what they feel, like, can they do something that makes us understand, so that there's a little bit more layers happening. And a lot of these like closer experiences that you try to capture, I think for me that's a little bit the whole point of film, or what I try to reach with film, is to give people an experience. So for you to sit down, to have this sound in your ears, to have these, and hopefully maybe have your own like roller coaster or whatever you go through physically, right? So for me, that's the power of film, is that we can do it in a way, the combination of those visuals and sound can kind of create that that experience. And maybe it's not an actual smell we're feeling, but maybe it's something that it's bringing up in our chest, like a tightness, and that's kind of the translation of that smell.
Or,
You know what
like
I mean?
it reminds us of something that we already felt
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. And obviously sometimes it is a close-up of, a piece of snow falling on a skin, but I think it is more about like, there's actually a moment in the film which I really like, which is a shot of just the snow like almost coming at us, which, by the way, that was an insane like scene, because we shot it in end of March and it was sunny, like warm, summery weather. But the scene with the snow was really important to me because it was what happened when my dad passed away. It was snowing, thick snow, random. And I remember how that felt like, it's these moments that feel like they mean so much more than, whatever we're actually experiencing. So that was a really important element for me. I mean, we were almost not going to be able to film it because it was so hot. We tried to get the Game of Thrones snow, and it was just like, we were trying to do it with a little like, and then it was actually we had predictions that it was gonna rain. So we were like, oh, so we can't even do the little Game of Thrones snow on them. And then we shot until like 1 a.m, and I was literally about to go, okay, I guess it's a wrap. I guess we're skipping that scene. And I look outside and it's a full snowstorm.
The movie gods at play.
Literally, we were like, oh my God. So it was like all those shots and that thick snow that you see, it was really there. And so I think that's also what adds to whatever little like physical experience you get to have, because you can't recreate that. Like, it just has to happen.
It's crazy how sometimes on a set, or even if it's a small project, sometimes everything can go wrong, but at the other way, sometimes you just get like exactly what you need at the specific moment when you're about to give up. So that's, I mean, I guess maybe it was your dad sending you something. Who knows? I feel like he would be very proud of your film. I really liked it. And was it also important for you to involve the LGBTQ community into that? Because I see like you're very involved. You went to a lot of festivals for that. Was that an important part of the story for you as well?
It's always been important for me to tell stories that maybe aren't so much about being in the LGBT community, but just have the characters in them. I think that's often been my approach, that I kind of wanted to tell stories. This could have been as easily a story between a man and a woman. And I just like to see two men experience it. And also I try to make it very clear that their inability to express their love to each other had nothing to do with being in the closet or, homophobia or anything. This was really just about the way that we can all experience the difficulty to love each other. And so sometimes that's what's like, in this case, that was important to me for this film.
Mm-hmm. No, but I see what you're saying in a sense that the characters are like, that doesn't necessarily have to be from the LGBTQ community, and the film would still work, but it's important to have them there to show like kind of like this diversity in some way. So I was just wondering why, what was this decision behind that? Because I see that you're, you went to a lot of festivals. I was looking at your resume and I was seeing a lot of LGBTQ festival. I feel like I just saw something on Instagram, or is the movie? Yeah. What's the festival?
It's screening on Sunday, so on the 30th of March. At the Roze Filmdagen, the Pink Film Days in Amsterdam. So yeah, for sure. No, and it's obviously like it's a big part of our theme. And it's and I think that the beauty of telling these stories is that we get to experience all the different layers of stories that LGBTQ people experience, which can have to do with their identity or to do with things that day-to-day people, anyone can experience, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm not mistaking, this was shot almost 2 years ago. So have you been working on something else since? What's next for Florence?
Well, I actually moved to LA a year ago, and I'm here right now more focusing on music videos and doing a little bit of a different thing.
Mhm.
Because I also feel like for me, these kinds of short films, it's like it took me about like 4 years to like think about this and like write about it and like simmer on it. The actual like making of it was, I think, a year and a half or something, but it takes me a while to get to something that I really want to tell, because they're kind of these, like, I take them out of my bones and I put them on screen. So I'm waiting for a bit until I start to pull something out of my bones again.
Well, it needs to be the right project, right? When if you want to follow up
Yeah.
with this, so you don't want to do something just to do something, so that kind of makes sense. But if you move to LA, I guess that's a good sign. You're getting close to the big leagues.
Yeah. And it's a really interesting industry to learn from as well, because
Yeah.
it's so different from European cinema. So I find it, very very inspiring and really interesting to be here and to see the way that people approach film here.
Yeah, it's a different world, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Before I leave, do you have some names that influence you as an artist? I'm thinking maybe films, directors, or just anybody.
That's always a hard question, but yes, if I think about filmmakers, I always think about Iñárritu and Wong Kar-wai. Somehow those two, like, directors and their films are always like what I grab back to. And then anyone in life, I mean, I think the people that we come across and that influence us and the kind of like the love we experience is really what shapes us and what truly does influence us. So I do think like my parents, my family, the people I love, my friends are kind of the soul of everything I make. So I will say that is, if we're talking about anyone, it's those people for sure.
That's a great answer. And once again, congratulations on where we stay. And I wish you all the best at the Cleveland Film Festival. And I'm sure your dad would be proud. He's going to be watching from above and sending you all the love.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Have a good one. Thanks for your time, Florence.
Bye bye.
Bye.